Howdy folks, so today I'm taking an in-depth look at a premium plugin for Adobe After Effects called Helium. This tool is going to allow you to unleash the power of true 3D directly inside of Adobe After Effects. When it comes to freelance motion design, I use Adobe After Effects. However, I've been wanting to jump into the world of 3D. I really want to learn a proper 3D program, something like Blender or Cinema 4D. So I specialize in cartographic animations, and more I've been receiving requests for really complex visualizations. Things like 3D terrain, 3D paths, or placing really detailed 3D objects on a flat map. Pretty much a lot of things that are really complicated to do inside of After Effects. I'm not saying they're impossible, I'm just saying there's a lot of limitations and it's really complex and it seems much more geared for a proper 3D program. So late last year I decided to set aside 2 hours a day over the course of 30 days in an attempt to learn Blender. I actually documented the experience and made a video about it. If you want to see that, head over to PremiumBeat's YouTube channel. So I did this with the hopes of really sparking an interest in the program. Unfortunately, by the end of the month, there was really no passion that was ignited. And I think the main deterrent was time. So naturally, learning a new 3D program from scratch takes a lot of time. It's a huge time investment. Now, when you're juggling multiple freelance projects with deadlines and personal family responsibilities, you start to realize time is a precious commodity. You know, when dedicating several hours to something a day, you'd like to see some kind of return on that time investment, and I just wasn't seeing it. That's why Helium really caught my interest. It dropped onto the scene right around the same time I was doing this Blender experiment. So at its core, Helium is a 3D motion design plugin. It allows users to quickly and easily create high-quality 3D animations all inside of Adobe After Effects. And I was really sold on this when I was checking out the product on the anescripts.com page. I was just reading through the comments, and there happened to be a comment from the creator that read, "Helium's purpose is to easily apply 3D effects without learning a new 3D software." And then looking at all the presets, it was almost like this tool was designed specifically for me and my cartographic visualizations that I create. So I had to check it out. All right, let's take a closer look at the Helium workflow. So I'm inside of a new After Effects project. I already have Helium installed. For the first step, I'm going to go into my composition here and I'm going to right click and create a new solid. And to keep things organized, I'm going to go ahead and I'll name this Helium Master. I'll make it the comp size, and the color doesn't really matter. Now with the solid selected, I'm going to go up here to Effect, and there's a section for Helium. And I'm just going to add Helium Effects. Once you get good at this tool and you know how to use it, you can go down here and select something specific, but let's not jump ahead here. So I'll add Helium Effects. This is going to launch the presets window. Now, one thing that makes this tool so user-friendly are all of these presets. So here you can search these presets via a keyword if you'd like, or you can just check out this top section here, which is the quick links. These are going to link you to all of the main subcategories of this tool. Helium is really all about effects, and these effects can be broken into two main categories. You have creator effects and you have modifier effects. So creator effects include things like models, primitives, extrusions, splines, terrain, scroll, and mirror. And then you have the modifier effects, which are things like material, cloners, transformations, scatter, procedural. Now in this workflow, you can rename these effects, you can stack them, you can duplicate them, and you can even pre-comp them via a Helium comp effect. So here under extrude, I have all of these text presets, and as I click on them, it gives me the animation kind of preview here. So I'm just going to select one and I'm going to apply it. Now this sets up my entire project here. So over here, I have my solid layer, but now you see I have all these other elements. It added my text element, which is a real text layer. It created a null, which this text layer is attached to. It created a 3D camera and a 3D point light. So if you go down here to the Helium Master solid layer, this is where the effect is applied, and you can see all of these parameters we have to play with to customize the look of our text. If I scroll back to the beginning here, you can see that we actually have an animation here. Now it just animates in, but you can see it's super responsive, super fast, and I can actually toggle that animation off here by clicking on this switch. Now the specific parameters that you're going to see available to you in the effect controls panel, those are really dependent on which specific creator or modifier effect you apply. So they're kind of slightly different for each, but they're not really confusing at all. It's all very straightforward. Now the way that you can animate and fly around this scene is quite simple and actually quite fun. So you have your standard AE native camera here, and if I click on shortcut key C, that's going to activate these camera control buttons. And you can see that these work just as any like native AE camera would work. So I can fly around and I can kind of zoom in here, and you're going to see we now have this 3D extruded text, which is very, very cool. So I can fly around this camera, keyframe it as normal. And as I said before, the text is actually connected to a null layer, and you can see it right here. It says Helium null. I can rename this to, once again, keep things organized. So I'm going to name it text control. And now you can see with this 3D widget, I can further move this around, and we actually have the world axis mode. So let's switch to local axis mode. Now you can see I can spin this around. So it's really versatile in all the different ways that you can move throughout the 3D space here and the 3D objects in 3D space. Okay, so lighting is kind of the same deal. The lights are going to work as they would work in any native After Effects project, as you saw with the example here in the camera. So here I have this point light. So let me once again orbit around my text here. And we have this point light, and now I'm going to go over here and grab it, and I'll just duplicate it. And now I'll kind of move it over a little. Let's move it over to the side here, and you can see it will affect it accordingly. Maybe we could push it back here. I don't know if point lights shoot in both directions, but let's see what happens here if I move it back. And now I can switch the view here, so we can go look at this from the top, and that's pretty helpful. So I can bring this over here, maybe bring it somewhere back here, and then I can double click on it and change some of the parameters here. So maybe we bring this down to like an intensity of like 70. And let's look at it from the left. Okay, and now let's go back to active camera. In addition to the native lights inside of Adobe After Effects, you can also do environment lighting. So up here in the effect controls panel of our extrusion effect, there's a little sun symbol. So if I click on here, that's going to bring up the presets window here, but in the environment section only. So there's some environment presets that I can choose from here. Let me just grab this first one here, and I'll double click to apply it. And now you can see it added these materials here, and it added a Helium environment null object. So you use the null to control the positioning of your environment lighting. So very, very cool. And all of the materials are going to be located in this specific pre-comp. And this is because of presets. So you can bring in your own materials, and you can have Helium point to that specific material comp or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and deactivate these lights here. And now I can go back, and I'm going to click the environment button again, and now you can see I have this cool little window here. I could jump back to the presets if I want. I could upload a file, or I can do a comp layer. And I can also specify shadow. I can make the environment visible if I want. So then you can help position it here. So I can go grab the Helium environment, and now I can position, I can move that environment around using the null. Super, super cool. Once again, I'm kind of getting out of my territory here. I don't know a whole lot about lighting with environments because I don't have much 3D experience here. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this. Let's go back to our standard lighting setup. Now, if you've ever worked with the Cinema 4D renderer, you know that when you activate, like if you want to get extrusion options and you activate that render, it automatically disables a bunch of the native After Effects tools. Like you lose like depth of field, you lose motion blur. A lot of those effects are not lost with this tool, which is very, very cool. So I can come in here and I can even edit this text. So let's just switch this to Paris, and all of the tools here inside the character panel are going to work. But if you really want to do some editing, go click on this big edit button. And here I can go change the extrusion profile. They have all these different presets. I can double click here to look at all the presets. So if I want to switch it to something a little different, I can double click, and that is going to apply it here. So now you can see we have totally different cool extrusion. You'll also see some other options down here at the bottom. I can change the animation preset. Once again, we have all these previews. So I can double click here and look at all the animation presets. Now the real power is in the material section. So if I double click here, you can actually add any of these materials. So there's a whole library of materials that you can download and unlock here. And you can see all the different subcategories here. You have fabric, marble, rock. So I'm going to go down here and let me just grab a wood material. I'm going to double click on this, and now we have this crazy wood material. And you can see once again it added a comp here with all of our JPEGs. We have the normal, the roughness, and the color. Incredibly cool. Over here in the extrude effect, if you open up properties, you can actually see some of the modifications and parameters you can change for the material. And one really cool thing, if you want to get into like the fine detailed changes, you can extract this material with this little button right here. It extracts the material. Now you have another effect which is placed beneath the extrusion or the text effect, and this gives us all the fine details. And once again, I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to 3D, so playing with this, I don't really know. Now the workflow here for effects is that if you extract a material and you have multiple objects or different creator effects placed above it, that material is going to be affecting all of them. If you don't want that to be the case, you can just hit this little button here, which is going to automatically switch that particular effect to take its default embedded effect. Okay, so hopefully this has given you a good idea, overall look at how to use Helium. Now I'm going to do like a real world sample. So one of the requests I get all the time is to put like a 3D model or a 3D object on a flat map and have it fly around and it be real 3D and really detailed. That's what I'm going to be doing in this example. So I'm going to go over here and I'll create a new comp and we'll call it 3D object on map. Helium actually has a number of preset 3D models already, but the real powerhouse feature of Helium is the fact that you can import OBJ files and fly around them and they can be true 3D. So let's take a look at how to do that. I'm going to create a new solid, and first I'm going to add my map. So I'm going to go to Effect, Helium, Add Helium Effects. So I'll go down to Primitives, and you can see all the different primitive options here. I'm going to grab this plane, and I downloaded this beautiful map from Shutterstock. I'm going to drag that into the comp, and it's ginormous. It's a really huge map of Paris. So I've got it here, and I'm going to actually turn the visibility off, but I need it in my actual comp so I can like refer to it and apply it. And now with this Helium master selected, I'm going to go over, and with the plane, I'm going to rename the plane effect, and I'm going to call it map. This is just to stay organized. And then down here in the null, I'm going to call this map control, so that I know that's what that is. And then over here I can see that under motion null this layer is selected, so now that's looking good. So for the texture, all I need to do is switch the texture to my map layer that is in my comp here. That's going to apply the map to the plane, and now I just need to change the actual resolution here, which I think is somewhere around 10,000 by what? By 7,000? Let's just rough it in. Okay, so now I've got this nice beautiful map. I've got the point light, I've got my camera, I can fly around it. But now I want to bring in essentially an Eiffel Tower. I want to bring in this OBJ of an Eiffel Tower that I downloaded, and I want to place it generally where it is in Paris, and then I want to do a quick animation. I can create a new, you have this little plus button here, and if you click this plus button, that's going to add a new effect. It's basically just like adding a new, think of it almost like a layer. So what I'm going to do here is you have these Helium tools. I'm going to click on this, and these are kind of like more shortcuts of things that you can create from scratch. So this one is model, used to import a 3D model OBJ file. So I'm going to double click on this, and then there's an import model button. So I'm going to import the model, and here is the OBJ. Click OK, and now that's going to place it right smack dab here. It's like a top-down view. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my camera tool, and let's just kind of like pivot this down to see where we're at. Now you can see we've got our little Eiffel Tower, and it's on Paris. Now your OBJ might come in a little bit differently depending on where the actual anchor point is. I don't know how that works when you create OBJs, but this one's set up nicely. It's flat, like flat on the map. And now I can go grab the Eiffel Tower null here, and I'm going to position this generally where it goes. So if I look over here, we're going to go to the send here. It's actually right here. So let me pivot this back down so we can see it here. This is the Eiffel Tower section right here. So I'll bring this right over here, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a rotation on the Z-axis, and then I'll maybe scale it up to like 150. All right, super cool. Now I can actually bring my camera, and we're going to navigate over to the Eiffel Tower, and I'm going to do a quick animation where the camera is basically like does a move where it kind of flies down or flies, you know, subtle flying around the actual Eiffel Tower. And I need to add another light here because this one point light just isn't doing it for me. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to new light, and I'm going to switch this to spotlight, and I want to make sure that it's casting shadows. Now I know a lot of you, if you're a 3D artist and you're looking at this like, why isn't he using environment lighting? Once again, I'm not really versed in all that stuff just yet. So I'm going to grab the spotlight. It's coming over this way. Now we got this nice little spotlight here. Now I'm just going to go into here, and I'm going to tweak the feather of the cone and make sure that it's not so intense like this. Okay, still looking a little strong. I could make it a lot better, but let's just go with that for now. Now I'll create a quick animation. I'm gonna go to my Helium camera and bring up the controls, just add a quick keyframe. So let's select a starting point here. That looks great. We'll go here, keyframe the position, and then at the 5-second mark, maybe it'll fly up this way. Maybe it'll just pivot down a little bit and it'll go more to the center and then fly in a little bit. And one thing that's cool about this is I can double click and now I can actually enable the depth of field, and I don't want it to lock to the zoom. Let's bring the blur up to like 150 and actually make it, you know, like really low, really shallow depth of field. Now the Eiffel Tower is actually blurred out, so I'm going to switch the view to top, and or should I do left? I'm going to switch the view so I can actually see the camera. Okay, so now if I go and I double click and I start to move the focus distance, I don't want to have it locked to the zoom. I want to, now I can get it to be positioned like right where the Eiffel Tower is, which is right here. Click OK, and now I should have an animation that's ready to rock it and roll it. Oh, we got like an Inception look. I don't know what happened here. Oops, looks like I just animated the position of the camera and not the point of interest. Okay, so there's this 3D terrain preset here in Helium. I have to test this out because just a few months ago I did the same kind of animation inside of Blender, and that was one of the main reasons I wanted to jump over to Blender, was to create a lot of terrain 3D style animations. That was an interesting experience. If you haven't seen that tutorial, please go check it out. So now I want to check out this terrain preset and kind of see how it compares. I'm going to go ahead and create a new solid, and we're going to call it terrain, and then I'll go to Effect, Helium, add Helium Effects. And then right over here we have the terrain. So there's 3 different options, one with this cool 3D icon. I'm just going to select the first one here and apply it. And the way this works is you have a height map and the texture imagery here. So what I want to do is I need to go to my project here, and I've actually imported these 2 images that I created from my Blender tutorial. I was doing terrain animations of this island in the Cape Verde Islands. So I'm going to drag these into my project here. I'm going to turn these off, and now I'm going to go back to Effect Controls, and I'm going to switch the height map to my Cape Verde height map here. And that should, okay, so there we go. Looking very good already. And I will switch the texture to Cape Verde map there. Okay, so just like that, wow, that was incredibly fast. Now let's kind of zoom out here. And for this, I think I'm going to do some kind of environment lighting, so I don't have to spend too much time trying to figure out what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go click on this button here, and let's do this imagery here. That's pretty incredible how fast it is. That was like less than a minute. Okay, so I can change the width and height without it, which I don't think I need to. Maybe I could bring the amount down a little bit, but for quality it's set to auto. So if I go to custom, I can actually change the, oh, you can see it dropped in quality there. So I don't know what auto was set at, but custom, I can do something like 1000 by 1000. Let's see what happens here. Let's see how, now we see how responsive this is. Yeah, let's actually bring this amount down. We need to bring the amount down a little bit. So let's bring this parameter down to like 600. And maybe I can even add a new spotlight here. So I'm going to go to spot, and let's just see what happens here. And then, you know what, I'm going to straight up double this quality and see what happens. See if my computer hangs up here. And I'm doing this all, I haven't turned the resolution down of my preview or anything, and everything's been working pretty swimmingly. Now the true test, I'm gonna render this out, but first I want to create a quick animation. So I'm gonna go grab this null here. You know, and a quick tip, if you go to the terrain here and you click on this little button, it's gonna immediately take you to that null, and I suggest you do that workflow. So I'm going to hit R for rotation, and I'm going to go to Y rotation. I'm going to add an expression and go to time, and then I'll do time times 100 just to have, like, you know, I just want it to spin around. Okay, now moment of truth, let's render this out and see how long this takes to render. Let's do something like a 10-second animation. That's pretty incredible. It looks great, and that render took just under 14 minutes. Definitely feasible for my workflows. Now, I don't want to make this tutorial 2 hours long, but I did go through here and I was able to bang on a couple of other animations. I did some cool animations with the scroll, and I thought this was actually going to look too like template-y, but once you fly that camera around, you change the lighting, you change the depth of field, you can immediately make it feel like it's an original animation. Okay, so some pros and cons. The pros: Helium definitely delivers in the user-friendly department. For real, the number of animations that I was able to crank out in just a few days or in just a few hours was absolutely phenomenal. This is great when making revisions and you really have a deadline. I was able to reach a level of comfort quickly using this tool as compared to Blender, where you're completely unfamiliar with the interface, you don't know how to operate the camera, and if you encounter any kind of problem and you're working in a professional environment, troubleshooting can take hours and hours, and it's just, you know, you have to realize, like, at what point do you know the software enough to be able to introduce it comfortably into your workflow when you're working on like a paid gig? I don't know. I only had really one complaint about this tool, and it was with importing OBJs. And to be honest, I'm not sure if it was just operator error, just because of my general lack of 3D knowledge, I wasn't doing something correctly. But I had OBJ files from a wide variety of different platforms, and I feel like almost 40 to 50% of the OBJs I was working with wouldn't import correctly with the texture, and I couldn't get the texture to apply. So the way that Helium is supposed to work, it's supposed to be able to read the MTL file or automatically apply your textures as long as they're all in the same folder. When it worked well. However, come to find out, some of the textures weren't working for me. I emailed the creator and he was incredibly fast and responsive and helpful, but he explained to me that it had to do with this PBR workflow. Again, something I totally didn't understand, that there's two main PBR workflows. One is roughness metal and the other is specular glossy. So Helium prefers the most common, which is the roughness metal, and apparently 40 to 50% of the OBJs I was using were in the specular glossy category. So I pretty much gave up trying to work with those. I didn't spend too much time troubleshooting it, but I, again, don't know if that's just an operator error thing or if that's a real issue with the tool that could be remedied. So final thoughts: I think this tool is great and it's amazing, and again, I think it was specifically designed for me. Thank you. And one interesting thing that did happen while I was using Helium was I found that I was becoming more interested. I wanted to go back and check out Blender again, and I want to go take a look at Cinema 4D now that I understand a little bit more about this workflow. You know, for me, trying to learn Blender, I feel like I was jumping into the deep end of the pool while not knowing how to swim. And Helium feels like I still don't know how to swim, but I'm drifting over to the deep end while wearing a set of water wings. Okay, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please go check out Helium. It's super cool. At that price point, it's definitely worth it if you want to dip your toe into the wonderful world of 3D. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more cool content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell.